Let's look at the marketplace. A nice way to start the week. A very gentle gain on the index. We're trying to see why the market softens a little bit weak at the knees. That's what's 1/10, less than 1/10%. You'll see there on your TV screen. We didn't get enough rally to get the all-share index across to 38,000. That's where we finished off on Thursday before the one-day Friday public holiday. The market came back with a very gentle uptick despite gains by bellwethers like Dangote Cement and Cadbury. The banking sector added this, but you see the volume there. In terms of volume, that's 500.19 million. That's, if you compare that to most of last week, the final week in November, we lost about 95% of that total market turnover for one day. And you see the banking sector down by 0.5%. That's on the day Access Bank came to brief the market and talk about its strategies and the BVN and what have you. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Consumer goods gained 0.44%, of course, because of Cadbury. Then industrial goods, 1.06%, because the big boy in that market space, Dangote Cement, was better, 0.33%, moving the market there. Then insurance, you need to keep an eye on this insurance. Now, we'll talk about that tomorrow. That's about 0.25%. The insurance stocks have been gaining, and you can see the volume in the last few weeks from WAPIC to Linkage Assurance and others. So we're going to talk about insurance tomorrow. We need some folks to unpack what's happening with this insurance stock. But don't forget, a few months ago, we warned you here on the program that foreign investors are coming very strongly to the Nigerian insurance market, and they are coming to make some pick of our insurance companies. You ignore that news, then you can see what is going on. We'll try to unpack that for you tomorrow, what's going on in the insurance space. Then you looked at the NASD over-the-counter market. That's we got our 600 index reading back on the USI, and the market cap, 418. That's a very strong rally on Monday, 3.01%. The volume for that drove that was quite small. There's a very small market, 14,691. Take that away, and let's look at the fixed income space where Treasury bills and Naira bonds playing. This is a very interesting market. Treasury bills, that's a little bit far below what our daily trading via the FMDQ OTC Securities Exchange, 66.55 billion naira. And you can see the discount there. As you can see, the four most actively traded via the FMDQ. If you look at the Naira bond, that's a little bit steady, 7.10 billion naira. Yesterday was when the debt office opened the Nigeria Savings Bond auction for the month of December. That'll be on the street till Thursday. Settlement will be Friday this week. The end. That will be on the 8th. So let's get back to the stock market. The Access Bank was at the stock exchange on Monday for an interaction with the stock exchange and the traders community. Channels business producer Temple Ashaju caught up with the chief executive Herbert Wigwe to chat to a few issues in banking, economy, and the markets. In particular, the biometric verification number and why that is a very sticky issue. Let's take a listen.
We like to share information. We like the markets to understand what we're doing. We like to ensure that there's no information asymmetry. So what we've done traditionally, and because governance is important to us, every 5 years, we basically come and share with the market where we're headed and basically give them a report of where we are. So by sharing with the entire market, the broker community would have a clear appreciation of the strategic direction of the enterprise and where we're headed and the new areas of focus, if any, or where we're extending our reach, so that people will have a clearer understanding of where revenues will come from and how diversified they would be. So for us, two critical things. First of all, over the next 5 years, we will strive to become the #1 bank in Nigeria. And most importantly, we will be known as Africa's gateway to the world through the things we will be doing.
Intra-African payment is a major part of your strategy at this point in time, but how are you looking at optimizing it?
Now, the same way you see large institutions overseas do it, you need to have the collaborations and relationships across the continent so that when somebody, for instance, is making payments within Africa, it happens seamlessly. If somebody is making payments from internationally, all right, I'm talking of overseas, into Africa, it also happens and ends up seamlessly, whether you have a presence in some of those locations or not. So it requires global collaborations, it requires correspondent banking arrangements, it also requires, to some extent, some physical presence, depending on if you choose to be present in that market. So arrangements with switching companies and all of those collaborations are things that we want to do. So we have, in the critical gateway markets in Asia, in the US, we are building and strengthening our relationships, okay, to ensure that transactions happen seamlessly. Now, across the continent, in places where we have a presence, okay, that is easy. For those where we don't have a presence, we are creating all of the arrangements required to ensure that those payments do happen.
At Access Bank, you're talking about improving on your SME lending, and that implies retail banking is about to get a boost from your management. So in terms of how the federal government has put in place initiatives around credit bureau and BVN, how have all of these worked for you in the banking sector?
Oh, significantly. I mean, the presence of BVN just means, for instance, if you have erring debtors, you can know who they are. And of course, the central bank has talked about ways in which we can manage people or identify those who have bad debts, okay, and who, therefore, through the various credit bureaus, we have identified them or blacklisted them if need be. So what does that do? It means that we have a rich database that we can play with, and we actually have resolved issues around KYC. So we know how to track a specific customer. If he's been a bad borrower in specific instances, we know whether to lend him money or not, because the database for the credit bureau is becoming more and more enriched. So all of those things are ensuring that there's better information to play with as far as the customer is concerned and whether you can lend money to them.
Does this mean you will support the federal government to go after bank account holders without BVN?
Oh, absolutely. We've traditionally done it. The idea is to follow an all-inclusive approach, is to try and get people to come into the fold. The idea is as many people as humanly possible, bring them to basically ensure that they have BVN. Obviously, there will be some difficulties in some cases. Lots of Nigerians live outside the country. It requires a little while to get them to come in. We need to make sure that they come in. We need to create the various things required to serve as an incentive, if you like, for them to come in. Okay, so it has to be moral suasion. We have to keep pushing and cajoling them until we get everybody on BVN.
We have some good news and some not so good news when we come back in our commodities market. Petrol queues resurfacing is one of the bad news. Well, let's put that into perspective when we come back.